Welcome to Bets on the Future, where we highlight the various career paths in the electrifying metals world. From the vehicle you ride in to the bridge holding it up, metals are everywhere. Why not in your career too? I'm Jennifer Betts, a metals industry veteran with almost 20 years experience, here to highlight these incredible career paths as told by the women who are living them. Today, we have a true industry leader joining us. Please give a warm welcome to Meaghan Fariello, sales representative for a mass distributor in stainless, aluminum, and PVF products. Meaghan Fariello brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table. With a background in behavior management, counseling, communications, and hospitality, they have achieved remarkable success in the metals industry, building, maintaining relationships, and helping clients meet their goals. Get ready for an enlightening conversation about getting into the metals industry after starting down a very different path. Wanted to say thank you, Meaghan. I know we've had a few scheduling challenges trying to get together, so I really appreciate it today. For those that, with the magic of editing, this is a Sunday afternoon. So I really appreciate it. You're taking time out of your weekend to do this. So for those that are listening, viewing online, this is Meaghan Fariello. She is out of Canada. She is a sales representative for a mass metals distributor specializing in stainless, extrusions, pipes, valves, fittings, specifically in the Canadian market, coast to coast. And so I just wanted to welcome you and learn a little bit more about how you got into this metals world.
Well, thanks for having me. It's the first time I'm getting to do something like this as well. So you'll have to bear with me and we'll navigate this together. But it was an interesting bridge into coming into sales and definitely the metals industry specifically. I actually came from working in behavior management. I did a lot of like child and youth work stuff. I worked in the group homes for years. Always bartended on the side because everybody needs a good side hustle, and I do like the hospitality and sales side that comes with that. And then COVID hit, so I was one of those ones that had one of those stories where it did affect my employment and forced me to look at different horizons and what other options are out there, especially ones that were a little bit more structurally sound, stable, recession proof, if anything. And then I leaned on actually a customer I used to service when I was bartending. So everything comes full circle. I just called them up and I'm like, Donnie, I'm freaking out, man. I love working with the kiddos, but working with the schools, every time they shut down, I was out of the gig. So he's like, well, why don't you come work with me? He's in the belting industry. So he's like, come with me. I'll help you out for a little bit just to kind of tie you over. I'm a bit of a workaholic, so I don't do well being still either and not working. So yeah, we hung out. I did some cold calls and did some sales stuff with him. And he mentioned that there was an opportunity for sales with the company I'm now with, and they're a mass distributor. So I don't like to close a door. So I just said, why not? Let's see where it takes me. And 2 years later, here I am.
That's incredible. It's something that has been a recurring trend that I've been seeing. For those that had no idea about the metals industry, the overlap between some of the soft skills that you've learned and the other, hospitality, even with, working with children along those lines, those skills translate to the metals industry in a variety of different ways. And it's really quite fascinating to see how people get introduced to it, because there are some people that are from family or they have friends in the industry. And so that's how they find out, similar to what happened with you. But for me, I didn't know about it until after college, right? It was a career fair opportunity. So it's always very interesting to see how people wind up in this industry that affects everyday life. Literally, It's all around us. And yet we never think about it as a career choice.
No, I specifically said to myself for years, I'd say all the way up until the last maybe 3 to 4, I said, I'm like, I'll never be in an office. I don't like to sit at a desk all day. Because that's kind of what I envision in being a salesperson is you're doing the calls and you're at the desk and you're at the computer, and there's some fun elements to that and being in an office, and sometimes you build your little office family, and so there's lots of little highlights that way. But I'm a bit of a busybody. I like to move. I've always worked on the farms, worked with the kids. This was my first time being in an office setting. So that was probably, for me personally, was more of the obstacle than a lot of the product knowledge and stuff. That stuff I knew I had to learn, and I knew I was going to come into that a little green. But I was most nervous for, am I going to be able to sit for 8 hours a day? That's it seems so weird.
And how have you been adjusting to it in the sales role? I imagine that yes, there is time in the office, but is there time where you're out visiting clients or seeing what they're producing with your products?
I'm very fortunate. I've come into my position as an inside salesperson, but I'm surrounded by a really great team and a great management team as well. And they want to provide us with lots of opportunities. I think they also know, and being a little bit more green to the industry, the more I see, the more conversations I'm having, the more clientele I'm meeting, because our customer base is quite large and our product ends up in so many different places. So for me, because I am such a hands-on person, it's cool to get out of the office, have those types of conversations, learn where everything's ending up, how they're utilizing it, and even just the camaraderie of it all. Like I said, I like to be out of the office. So to get out and have a lunch and to meet them is a bonus as well, because you can chill, have a more casual conversation. It doesn't have to be work, work, work all the time. So that's a nice break. And like I said, I'm lucky that my place of work allows me to kind of branch in and out. Some places, you're either inside or you're outside. And that might play to your skill set. Some people prefer one or the other.
Absolutely.
So I'm lucky I get a balance of both.
For those that are unfamiliar with where you fit in the supply chain, if you will, of the metals industry, would you be able to elaborate on exactly, from the mining raw materials, steel mill, onto the finished product side of it? Where do you fit in that supply chain?
So we're a mass distributor. So we will sell and deal with other distributors. A big part of where we fit within the market is we alleviate a lot of pressure from the lead times that you sometimes get from offshore mills. So we will stock and carry raw materials. We don't deal in manufacturing, fabricating, and things like that. Sometimes that's where our material will end up when it goes to the end user. But we deal with distributors directly. So our clientele, when it gets to them, they eventually will deal with the end user. And then which is cool for me because it really can end up anywhere. I never really know. It could end up being cut into a piece for your exhaust because that's who my distributor sells to, or it could end up being a pipeline in your city because my distributor works with the cities and on like more of a municipal level. So it's really neat. We just don't deal with the end users directly, and that allows our customers to also allow their place in the market to stay strong and healthy as well.
You mentioned a couple very unique, specific items that your products have wound up in. Is there one in particular, a favorite or something that really surprised you in terms of where one of your products wound up?
For me, it was really cool, actually. Because we do a lot with the PVF side of stuff. Some of our customers do work directly with the municipalities and do some of the pipelines and things like that. So actually where I live, it was neat to find out that all of our pipelines for all of our inner city stuff was all supplied by one of our customers. So it was kind of cool to be like, oh, I know where you get your stuff.
It's really fascinating once you get into this industry to see how one email or one work order can suddenly go into something that affects your actual everyday life. So now it's very interesting for you to be able to say you were a part of the infrastructure in your area. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is quite neat. And to be able to actually have a fun conversation about, pipes and plumbing is also kind of cool too, right? It's not just talking about the material, it's talking about all of the little pieces that kind of led up to why you're talking about the pipe and the material itself, which is kind of cool.
Absolutely. We talked a little bit about the master distributor that you work for handles stainless extrusions, pipe valves and fittings, PVFs, for those in the industry. Is there a way that you'd be able to explain to somebody that is not, again, inside this industry, what exactly, an extrusion is, what I'm sure they're probably pretty familiar with what a pipe or a fitting is, but maybe what stainless products where that material goes into.
Yeah, so we because we deal with raw materials, a lot of our stuff is very structural. So we can do anything from like stainless round bars. It can be used for multiple different purposes. It can typically a lot of our stuff is structural, so it can go into things like bridges. But we do we are in aluminum as well. So our aluminum is not structural. So typically you'll see things on more of an ornamental side, like so fancy. So we get the boat rails, hospitals is where you'll see like a lot of stainless that has like a polished finish.
Mm-hmm.
So something like even just like the rails on the beds and things like that. So that's material that we would sell. We're not selling it cut and bent to make that product. We'll sell the initial large extrusion that will
Mm-hmm.
be sold to our distributor. They'll toss it on to whoever their end user is, and they might be the ones who are making the material for the hospital, but that's kind of where it would all go through. Does
So
that
you've
help?
been, yes, yes, absolutely. I'm sure there will be questions once this is uploaded and sent out there. It's something that I'm trying to get individuals to recognize that metals is a really interesting career path, but most people are not familiar with what we do, where there are opportunities. You could be in sales in your current role. You could then start niching down into, getting down to like some of your customers as well, into some of those productions. You can switch it all the way to the other side. You could be in sales on the raw materials, like the recycled material side of things, even at the mills themselves. And so finding this industry, I mean, essentially, you're going to be set up for life because you're going to get these skills, this knowledge that metals are everywhere. They're local. They're all around us, and so you should be able to have a really wonderful career track, and more people need to be aware of that.
And I think too, like for me, a lot of my excitement, because as I said, I am still new and I'm still learning. So a lot of the same questions, your audience is going to have, I'm probably still having myself. So for me, a lot of my excitement is coming in the learning new things. But what drew me was I saw a really good fit for my previous skill set coming in when working with the kids and working with families, multidisciplinary teams. I loved building and maintaining relationships. I love the idea of figuring out what your goal is and how to meet it. So, material aside, that also comes a lot into play in your day to day as well, and who you're meeting, and not just who you're talking to. Those skill sets come into play when you're in the office as well. So you're in a small little place. Politics and drama happen. So it's psychology is good to have in your background.
Absolutely. It seems like everyone should have taken a psychology course at least once in their life just to understand the team dynamics that go into play in an office setting for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Is there
And conflict resolution too, I think is a big one too. You're going to deal with conflict all the time. And for
Mhm.
me, I find that exciting. Like I like that challenge. I'm like, okay, like how can we make everybody happy? Or how can we just find a solution, even if it doesn't result in everybody's happiness? Like we just got to resolve the conflict itself, right?
Absolutely. That leads me into my next question in terms of what have you found most challenging about the metals industry?
The most challenging actually for me is I went into when I started doing the outside sales piece and stuff. I went into it confident and excited, and it does serve me well still. But because I'm so excited and so passionate about working with the material, and I'm like, oh yeah, we do this, and oh, our trucks do that. So from a sales perspective, that's not always well accepted. When you're out with the clients, we're out of the office right now, Meaghan, like let's chill for a second, where I'm just like, oh man, like I want to tell you about everything though. So for me, the most challenging part was actually more of the outside sales piece and learning how to navigate some of those conversations and reminding myself that doesn't have to be all about what you're selling. A lot of it is building those relationships, like I was saying before. So interestingly enough, I have had a hard time kind of figuring out where my balance is when I'm doing some of those face-to-face things. It comes with enthusiasm, but it does, need some tweaking. So that's probably my personal biggest challenge. But everybody I meet is so accepting and so open-armed with wanting to help you and wanting to give you advice and support you through it. Nobody's overly critical. They know that I'm relatively new to the industry. One of the best pieces of advice that I was given to what I was personally struggling with was, when you are meeting somebody, if you're fortunate enough to do it in their office setting or in a setting that's more personal to them, take a look around the room. What's behind you. Like, I can see that you're into recycling. I can see the book behind you. Like, I talk about that. Like, I can see that you have like the flower arrangements. Like, are you into agriculture, and like really drawing on that type of stuff. We don't have to, get right into the nitty gritty right away. So that was cool for me because I consider myself an observant person, but when I want to get in there, sometimes you miss the background.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad that you touched on that as well, because that's how we ended up meeting. Is I put something out on LinkedIn, and somebody at another company that you have done business with was the one that recommended that I reach out to you. And so it just shows that this industry is more supportive and willing to help new individuals get into this industry and help educate, because I'm sure that individual recognizes that you're relatively new, although 2 years, I feel like you're going to be a lifer at this point.
Oh yeah, oh, trust me, I tell everybody, and they told me this too when I started. Once you're in the metals industry, it's like in your blood. Like, so I got hooked up to whatever IV the rest of them are on.
It's a very cheesy joke, but I like to joke around that my doctor thinks that I have too much iron in my blood, right? Like, it's just, once you get into this, you cannot unsee everything like in your everyday life that is metal. It's
Mhm.
And then you start thinking of the opportunities of, I wonder where they manufacture that. Can I sell them any of the products that I'm working with? Do they have any recycled materials that are coming off their line that I might be able to help out with another company on then? It just
Mhm.
starts to get these wheels turning that, up until my first job out of school in the metals industry, I had zero idea about.
I was fortunate. My father is still in the tool and die industry. And he was great growing up. If we were of the age where we should, be working in the summer and we couldn't find our job, perfect. You can come work for me in the factory. There's always a gig for you over there. So I'm the oldest of four, and all four of us worked with my dad at one point in time. And it was motivating, and also at the time, you don't really think much of it. Like, you're there sweeping the floors and working on a couple machines. But now it's so cool to be able to have conversations about the injection molds that he's doing. They have to use, 300 series stainless to do all their stuff. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, which one? I'm like, we sell 300 series. and most people don't even know what that means, and neither did I.
There are some really interesting ways to get in. Now that you've been in the industry for 2 years, you had some experiences with your family growing up, introducing you into the metals industry. What advice would you give to individuals that are thinking about a career in the metal space?
Uh, don't don't make assumptions. Definitely. I think it's so important to go into it open-minded. Sometimes people go into it thinking that, and maybe even knowing that customer service is where their skill set lies. And maybe that's the job that you get hired for. But then all of a sudden you're in there and you're like, okay, I'm sorry, what's her role, and what is his role? Like, what are they doing? Because that looks cool. Or what are you guys talking about? And because that's been it for me, getting to really listen in on and watch other people. Like, even though I'm in sales, I deal with purchasers. I still deal closely with like the warehouse guys, and I love logistics. I love talking about all that type of stuff. So it's cool to kind of see what other avenues you can take. So definitely don't make assumptions and never sell yourself short. That's always a big one. Yeah.
Absolutely. There are so many opportunities in this industry, and I'm very excited to see where you're going to go. It's been wonderful seeing individuals from a variety of experiences and variety of backgrounds through this process of interviewing them for the podcast, because it gives me such great hope and optimism for our industry as we get new individuals into it. There are a lot of experienced individuals in the metal space that are going to start retiring in the next 5, 10 years, which is somewhat anxiety ridden for me because they contain so much knowledge and we haven't really fully passed that on yet. So it's wonderful to hear stories like yours, getting introduced, getting excited, realizing it's going to be the lifelong career choice, and hopefully we can get more individuals like yourself excited about the metals industry and come
Oh
join us.
yeah, we definitely will. I feel like personalities like ours, we'll get them hooked up to that IV. Don't worry.
Yes, exactly. We'll use a little bit of recycled materials in there. It'll be fine. It'll be great in there.
Perfect. See, we already got an action plan.
Yes. Is there anything that you want to share about what you're working on in particular, or anything that's of interest that you and your company are working on that you just want to share in terms of, unique projects that might be of interest to folks not in the metals industry?
I think what's cool about, especially working at a mass distributor level, all of our distributors are also growing. So it forces us almost to be continuously adapting, always being aware of what's happening within the industry. So, being just actively involved, not just with what's happening so with the economy and things like that, but definitely with what our customers are doing and what new projects they have going on, and how we can accommodate that. So when we're watching them grow, it indirectly causes us to grow, which is kind of neat. So like I wouldn't say there's any one specific project. We're just always working with our customers actively. So whether it's trying to figure out what new products to bring in, that's probably the most active conversation we're having right now around the office, is learning that there's a bunch of other stainless products that are within our wheelhouse and most certainly within our customers' wheelhouse. So how can we accommodate those needs? So that's kind of cool. It opens up new conversations, new connections. But yeah, I feel like every day we've all of a sudden have a project that pops up on our desk. Like, hey, how can you guys do this? Not too sure, but I will figure this out for you.
The rabbit holes you can go down in this industry are really quite interesting from that perspective. It never seems like a dull day in the office, and it definitely is not a dull day when you go and visit clients on site to see what their manufacturing facilities are like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It,
absolutely. And it's super cool too. Like we deal with the mills directly. So when we get customers that bring us specialty items or specialty lengths and sizes and things that just aren't on the market, and maybe it's very project specific, that's really neat to see what type of capabilities our mills have and what they can and can't accommodate and how they can accommodate it, because a lot of times they need to make those changes and what that's going to look like. So it's nothing happens overnight, which is also kind of cool because there's just so many moving pieces. But it keeps you on your toes all the time. You're like, okay, so what's my answer from this person? I'm just like, okay, we got this piece. All right, now we got to get this piece.
yes, you got to help them essentially get the full scope of everything that they're going to need for their projects into one order, basically. So it probably is kind of like playing detective.
Yep.
Trying to
Yeah.
find
Inspector Clouseau. Like I put the hat on whenever. I love it.
it. Is there anything that surprised you about this industry?
For me, I think the biggest surprise was myself, definitely, going into it and knowing that maybe some things like don't want to admit that numbers are not haven't always been my strong suit. So that was probably where some of my nerves came in the most. I was like, oh goodness, I'm in a very numbers driven industry. So that's allowed me to be like, again, and I surprised myself. I still I'm not like some of my colleagues. Like I swear they've got a calculator in their head. I don't know how they do it. Kudos to them though, because if a computer and the internet goes down, they're fine. But But for me, I can get her done, but yeah, I'm gonna slow down a little bit. So that's but I got it done and I figured things out. So that for me was cool to learn things about myself, for sure. But as far as the industry is concerned, I didn't know a lot going into it. So a lot of things surprised me in and around what not to say, what to say, what we sell, what we don't sell, why we don't sell it was probably some of the other things as well. Was really kind of learning how to navigate the market that way. And being a mass distributor, there's a lot of things that we don't do, mostly just because there's other people within the market. So we got to be respectful of where they are, and there's a chain. So you want to make sure the chain is intact. Other than that, somebody's losing. We want everybody to win, which is also what's cool about the industry. Everybody really
Absolutely.
is looking out for each other in some form or fashion, whether you're all bidding for the job or not.
At the end of the day, it's a relatively small industry that affects a large population. And so everyone has either worked with somebody else in the industry, they've either worked together at the same company 30 years ago, and then, 5 companies later, they're back together. And so there isn't really a common burning of bridges, right? There are a few great stories about those, but generally speaking, folks in this industry understand that you're going to do business with your competitor one day, your customer the next. It's all of these opportunities, and you don't always know who is going to be the next client, but you do know that you need to be respectful, help make sure everybody is winning together, because we want to keep a lot of these industries alive and well in North America.
Absolutely. And because it's such a small industry and everybody is in some form or fashion really working unilaterally, when you're going to also these massive events, like I'm sure yours in Nashville, I'm sure a lot of those players, like they're all probably also at the same time competitors, at the same time, all in the same room. And we've been through to a couple of events like that for with our workplace, and it's neat to see them all there. And it's just like that they're all competitors, but they're all shaking hands, like, "Oh, hey, buddy! Oh, I remember back in the day. We're golfing this weekend, right?" Like,
Yes. Yes.
so it's really at the end of the day a lot of fun, and as important as the business side of things are, everybody just really wants to do well for themselves and to watch others do well too.
Absolutely. On that note, I do want to say thank you so much for coming on here. I want to be respectful that it is a Sunday. It's a weekend for you, so that you can have more time with your loved ones this weekend. But I do want to say it's been very interesting getting to know you, your background, how you found this industry, and I'm looking forward to seeing what watching your career grow over the years.
Oh, well, thanks, Jennifer. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do it too. Like I said, it was the first time doing something like this, and it was nice getting to do it with yourself, because you have a great way about you, and I do enjoy what you're trying to do and how you're doing it. And I feel the same way. I'm excited to watch you and your growth in your career as well.
Thank you. I truly appreciate that.